please.
Good, Count Corla. Firstly, Count Corla, I'd like to support Deputy Cahill's call for opening allotments in urban areas. These fulfil an essential these are essential function in terms of food production, but also allotments provide an outlet for urban dwellers to carry out physical exercise and in a safe and socially distant way, while also allowing positive interaction with their communities. Minister, the Covid-19 health crisis and the associated financial crisis have focused the minds of many worldwide on the importance of food security and the agri-food sector, which employs 173,000 people in this country. The United Nations has warned that while parts of the world are on the brink of a hunger pandemic, some countries are dumping milk due to breakdown of supply lines. Meanwhile, Irish farmers are suffering significant financial losses, especially in the beef and dairy sectors. The Covid-19 crisis is affecting the agriculture sector, and we must make sure we provide support to farmers. Farmers are not just producers of food, they have a vital role to play as environmental stewards in areas such as water quality, biodiversity, climate mitigation and adaptation. Without the cooperation of farmers, Ireland cannot reach its targets of cutting emissions in line with the Paris Agreement. We need to engage with farmers and other stakeholders to review and analyse the full range of land diversification options, from horticultural production, protein crop production and organic farming to afforestation and agroforestry. Most of all, we must be guided by science. The science says we must reduce emissions to keep our planet from warming dangerously. We must make sure that we listen to scientific advice to make sure every sector plays its part while ensuring no sector is targeted unfairly. Minister, to this end, I would like to ask, are you aware that research by Teagasc has shown that multi-species grass swards can reduce artificial fertiliser use by 50%, increase the soil's ability to resist leaching and increase biodiversity? I would like to ask you whether you will commit your department to funding further research with a view to promoting widespread movement away from perennial ryegrass swards and an associated reduction in the use of imported artificial fertiliser in order to help reduce the price of inputs for farmers as they face significant challenges as a result of the Covid-19 crisis. Finally, Minister, I would like to ask you about gorse fires. I have a concern about the pressure being placed on emergency services during the COVID crisis, and I have a concern with my colleague Deputy Stephen Matthews about recent gorse fires in Kildare and Wicklow. Does the Minister feel that his department is working closely enough with hill farmers in areas at risk of out-of-control gorse fires, and is there anything further that can be done to work in a cooperative manner with farmers to ensure good land management in hill areas at risk of gorse fires? Garmahagat.
Thanks very much. I want to thank the Minister. Minister, I just want to raise a few points. I've roughly 5 minutes. I'd expect that I'll use probably about 2 or 3, and I'd ask you to respond. This is a public health crisis, but we have to strike a balance. And what I really want, I suppose, to ask the Minister is, the Taoiseach today, in his presentation to the House, spoke about 5 conditions he's going to look at in terms of easing restrictions: progress of the disease, healthcare capacity and resilience, testing, tracing and contact and tracing, ability to shield and care for vulnerable groups, and then the risk of secondary morbidity due to and mortality. I just want to ask you, Minister, where do you see those? You made reference to about COVID being with us for a long time. How long do you expect that COVID will be a daily part of people's lives and in terms of the business sector? I also want to ask you to clarify the whole area around elective work. We are getting a lot of people in Limerick and North Tip where in many cases we're being told that some of the elective work that needs to happen, it's veering into the acute area. Can they be, where does that fall into the whole issue in terms of the private hospitals? What way can that capacity be used? You made reference to you must preserve that capacity. The over 70s and the cocooning. I have elderly parents. They don't like to be called elderly, but they are. We haven't seen them in over a month. We are very similar to many other people. The question is, Minister, in terms of lifting the restrictions, are you going to look at ways around very much undermining with public health, where these people outside the 2 kilometre limit can be people don't have to actually come into contact with them, but they can physically see them to check up on them. And finally, Minister, two final questions. Testing and tracing. University of Limerick are willing to provide a testing and a lab on site for the community. Are you looking at regional testing? And my view on it at this stage, we must get back to some sense of normality with the business sector, daily lives. Contact tracing and testing are the key ones. We must get up to that 100,000 limit as quickly as possible, because at the end of the day, people's lives are being impacted. Will you look at it on a regional basis? And one of the issues that's coming up finally is the reverse of that. Students, third-level students, will certainly be finishing, in many cases, their online exams. Many of those will no longer be going abroad in terms of finding jobs. And there's a worry that in many cases they'll be, we'll say, renting houses or whatever in terms of social distancing. Is that being looked at? Is that being considered? So, Minister, if you could address those points very quickly. Thank you. If I could, please. Minister, I think it's generally acknowledged by, I want to speak in terms of the small business sector in Limerick and North Tipperary, which I represent, that the government have very much put in place measures to ensure they can come through the COVID. But I think the biggest challenge now we face is in terms of getting businesses reopened. And we must ensure, and this is a challenge will be, to ensure that the liquidity crisis doesn't become a solvency crisis for the small business. That's the big challenge. It was the big challenge in the last crisis. It's the biggest challenge now. So what I'd ask you, Minister, is have you looked at doing sectoral plans? I think that's the key. Proper preparation, looking at how various industries are impacted, the impact of social distancing, and above all, that they can be viable. What businesses want to see is a sightline. They're not looking actually to see things to be opened up overnight, but they want to see over the next number of months when they get to a point, and that we want measures in place to ensure that the liquidity crisis does not become a solvency crisis for the SME sector. So, Minister, you might just respond. Thank you.
Issue. Can I just be very clear here? First of all, the Taoiseach announced earlier that a comprehensive plan is being developed with regard to how restrictions will be eased and what they will look like. Unfortunately, it's not going to be like flicking on a switch and everything goes back to normal. That's not going to happen. But we will have the roadmap. We will have the supports, and we are engaging with businesses on protocols. We're working with the LEAF, which is the Labour and Employers Economic Forum. We're working with the HSA, we're working with IBEC, we're working with ICTU. I've met every single representative body. I've had conference calls with them all. I have listened to all of their concerns, and I'm listening to all of the concerns that I'm hearing today from the different deputies that are bringing them in from obviously all parts of the country. And I'm putting together a package of supports with Minister Donoghue. But what we have to do is target the right place at the right time, because we must remember that this is taxpayers' money. It's not finite, but we want to get the best value for the investment that we want to put in. Thank you.